a developer, a maintainer, and an administrator for Wikipedia's OSS programs. Meet Pavitra Eshamurthy, a developer advocate at QuantSight working to improve developer experience and community engagement in various open source projects of PyData community. Today, Pavitra will be speaking about accessible data visualizations, discussing principles and guidelines, along with some tips for data scientists and analysts on how to make your data visualizations, particularly all those visuals, accessible for people with disabilities, especially the ones who cannot actually visualize the data the way we people, the ones who have the ability to do so, do, and how you can make it more accessible, and also discussing some accessibility affordless in the library. Over to you, Pavitra.
And welcome to Accessible Data Visualization. My name is Pavitra. I work as a developer advocate at QuantSight Labs. I'm also a part of the core team at Bokeh. Bokeh is a data visualization library and is central to this talk a little bit. And I've also been a part of the open source community for nearly 5 years, and I'm really, really happy to be here at PyLadiesCon because PyLadies has been a very essential and important part of my open source journey so far. And finally, I'm not an accessibility expert. This talk is about accessibility, and I'm going to be sharing some ideas and thoughts from various projects I've worked on around accessible data visualization. But I'm not the expert in the field. I've worked with some experts, and I'm reading their ideas as well. All right, so let's get started with data visualization. And recognize just how data visualization is all around us. So we use it in data analysis, right? In Jupyter notebooks. We use it to present information in the web, like, for example, the Python developer survey results. We use it in activity monitoring, and telemetry analysis. That's how telemetry data is usually presented with graphs. It's in research papers, not just digital, but also sometimes print media and physical form. So data visualization really is everywhere. And with accessibility, our goal is to make sure it is usable and and provides value to just as many people as it can, which includes people with disabilities and particularly but not limited to folks with vision impairment and cognitive impairment. Right. So with this goal in mind, I want to present two specific projects with you. First is organization level data visualization. So this is an older project. About I think 1.5-ish years ago, we worked on making the visualizations used at QuantSight Labs more accessible. And this is a small scale project. The focus is on labs. So we have very specific brand colors and fonts and such, right? And then we realized the two most common plots we use in labs. So for example, like our internal reports, slides, like if in some talks we give. So the most common types of plots were the line and bar plot. So we focus on those. And we also realized the plots were static. So this is a very scoped project. And the idea was to just create some guidelines, for like color, text size, and more to make sure the plots we create are accessible to more people. And this project was a part of our internship program, where an intern, Pranav Goyal, worked with mentors Isabella and Tanya on this and created a design system and design guidelines for QuantSight. So these are just two screenshots of our internal design system, but these are definitely more QuantSight specific. I'll just show you an example of plots that are more accessible. On the left, we have a bar plot, which is a stacked bar plot, which is showing almost like 10 different variables. This is in both light and dark mode. So we have an accessible palette, and we have some texture options throughout. And on the right here is a line plot. Again, it has texture elements. The colors were chosen for accessibility. And also want to call out that the labels used have an outline, which improves accessibility as well. So not just these main elements, but all the background elements like the font size, the axes, all of these were created to follow certain accessibility standards. Like don't read too much to the data itself. I'm sure those are like placeholders. I just wanted to show just an example of what the end result looked like. Um, this is, however, more lab specific. So some general notes that can be useful for most folks are here. So first is to focus on color contrast. This is usually where we start when we think about accessibility, right? So we need to have enough contrast in color between like all of your primary elements, but also with the background and like axes, labels, just all aspects of your plot need to have just enough contrast. And we have a lot of like accessibility, color contrast checkers available online that you can use to do this. Next is making sure you have adequate weights. So in a bar plot, that's like the width of your bar. In lines, it's the thickness of the lines, making sure the font sizes used are large enough. So that's the second aspect to consider. Third is using textures and shape in addition to color. So color is not the only differentiating factor in your plots. So in the line plot, as we saw, you can use a solid and a dotted line. With a scatter plot, just using different shapes for glyphs and such. Next, look into spacing. Just make sure all your elements are not just have adequate spacing so that it's recognizable and not clumped together. Makes it difficult to read. Then consider including the raw data where relevant. So this is usually easier to parse, right? So it can be, you can present it as a table or just include it in the narration. And speaking of narration, we want to include alt text and explain what this plot is showing in words in addition to the plot itself. Okay, so with this, we ended up using these guidelines across the world, across all of our work. And one example is our annual report, where this is a plot from our annual report. This follows all the guidelines. It included an alt text. It has texture. It uses the lab's brand colors. Now, this also brings me to the second project. So this plot, so we have guidelines, we have written guidelines, but this plot was created using Matplotlib, which is a very popular data visualization tool. But we did need to customize it a lot to achieve this result, right? And it would be really nice if our tools had a more accessible default baseline. So with that, we can ensure like just a lot of the visualization that will go out into the world is accessible. So this is the second project where we worked on Bokeh. So Bokeh is a data visualization library. It's a Python library for creating interactive data visualizations, and it's primarily aimed at like browser-based visualization. So you can you can create really interactive plots with almost minimal JavaScript, right? You write mainly Python code. If you work with like Plotly or Streamlit, those also have a similar framework. Now, the project itself is funded by the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. It's to improve accessibility standards within Bokeh. And we chose Bokeh for two primary reasons. First is it's browser-based visualizations, right? So we can lean on a lot of the guidelines and standards developed for the web. And second is Bokeh is a mature library. It's been around for almost 10 years, and we have a lot of other tools building on top of it, like the HoloViz toolkit, if you're familiar. And it's also used by a lot of people. So all the improvements we make in Bokeh can propagate to a lot of people relatively soon. So that is the other project. This is an ongoing project. So we have a 2-year grant from the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, and we started work on this just a few months ago. So folks, just like illustrate this a little more, these are like two Bokeh plots. This is the same plot, the interns and mentors plot we saw from the report earlier. And on the left, this is the very, very, very default Bokeh plot. No extra additions, like just the data and plotting with a horizontal bar. Now, clearly there is scope for improvement. We have the main color. We want to make sure all the other aspects of the plot, like axes, labels, ticks, like the defaults, are more accessible. But what is really great about our tools is, and especially Bokeh, is it's very, very customizable. So on the right here, all I've done is included a high contrast palette, which is built into Bokeh, the palette itself. So we can customize almost everything about this plot and actually just make the previous plot, like replicate it one to one. It just needs a lot more work. So there is a lot of potential here and work to do. Oh, another thing is there is the customizations we can make to replicate the old plot is, let's just go back and look at that plot once. Something like this. This is only one dimension, right, of accessibility. As I mentioned, Bokeh is interactive. So we also want to make sure all the interactions are accessible. And where do we start with that? So that's all we're going to look at as a part of this new project, right? And the specific objectives are here. So first is we are going to start with an audit of all the plot components, the default plots that are generated, and all the interactions. Second is we're going to add support for alternative text and ARIA labels within the plot itself. We don't have support for this right now. Next is support for non-English languages in plots. So all the text elements in plots, just making sure we can have those text, the text there can be in various other languages, and also maybe enable some translation features so you can switch between languages. And fourth, theming and styling system refactor. So clearly, so the defaults need to be updated. And we realized that a refactor of the styling system within Bokeh was required to achieve those results and to allow us to create those accessible styles later. And finally, bringing it all together, making sure we have adequate tests and documentation so that the accessibility standards we bring in are maintained as the project grows and evolves. We have already started work on two fronts. So the first is the audit and second is tests. So we'll just look at these two really quickly. For the audit, we have been using Chartability. So this is a project with a set of heuristics, just like very specific questions, testable questions, to ensure our data visualization is accessible. It consists of these 7 principles, which is perceivable, operable, understandable, robust, which is the POUR principles common in the accessibility space, as well as 3 other principles: compromising, assistive, flexible. You can learn more about all of these in the documentation for Chartability, which is at chartability.phys.studio. And what I really love about Chartability is the workbook it comes with. So there is very clear, specific documentation about how to perform an audit and tests and the specific test itself, tests and questions. So we have about 50 tests and 14 of those are critical. And I have some screenshots of the workbook. You can go check this out and use it to audit your own work. And we have been doing this, using this to audit Bokeh. And all the findings are in this repository, which is Quantsite Labs / Bokeh-A11y-audit. And the audit is performed by Frank Pilarski, who is the creator of Chartability. So we are really glad to be working with him. And you have both the workbook itself and also an actual example of a full audit being performed for a tool here. So that's the audit part. This is, as I said, still in progress. So we're in the process as of recording, summarizing all of these results, and will be available even broadly after that. Next is testing. So we had another internship program this year, and as a part of that, we explored using Playwright, which is a tool for writing end-to-end browser-based tests. For testing accessibility in Bokeh and what that would even look like. So we had Shimezuo and the intern, and Gabriel and Tanya were the mentors for this project. And We have a POC, which is still in a draft state. We're still working on what this will look like. I do have a blog post linked here by Chiamezo going into more details about specifics of this project. All right, so with that, we're at the end of the talk. I would like to acknowledge just everybody who's been involved in both of these projects so far. All of the work I've been able to present is thanks to their efforts. And thank you also for your time. And if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them now.
Thanks a lot for the wonderful session, Pavitra. I think that was really needed. Often we fail to recognize that how us people with ability, the privilege that we have, the ability that we have, some of the brightest minds in the universe do not have. The way we can see things, some can't, but they have the mind, they have the brain power to do it. And today, Pavitra told us how we can help them bridge the gap and come just a bit closer to make all of us included in the community that is data visualization. Thank you.